Do you think that that's actually the direction this country is going, where we're just going to become like a third world sort of despot regime? Or do you think that the Democrats and the establishment will be able to fight back, resist enough come 2028 to break us out of this?
Here's my exclusive The Vanguard optimism take, which I haven't shared before on any platform. They're not moving fast enough, and they're being inefficient, and they're getting distracted. They're not being super clinical about it. They're fighting on too many fronts. This policy of Steve Bannon's to flood the zone has a drawback, and the drawback is apparent. I mean, they're not competent at running the government. I don't see Cenk as a pure grifter in that sense. I think that he's convinced himself that this is the right path.
You know, it's a complex stew of different things. But yeah, I think ultimately Cenk is a capitalist. And what we see is that when all you care about is making money and getting attention, you will easily sacrifice a lot of your so-called principles or political ideological values to, you know, attempt to achieve that ends. And it's embarrassing and pathetic for Cenk because it's actually done the opposite. It's totally backfired.
Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description.
Yo, what's up, Pisco?
Yo, how we doing, boys? Silly and Billy. How's it going?
What's up, man? How are you?
Doing well. Yo, guys, can I get a quick little lore recap on the Silly and Billy situation? I assume that's a TYT thing, but my audience wants to know.
Sure, yeah. So, Cenk Uyger refused to acknowledge us for a long time as we were kind of pestering him, which makes sense, right? From his POV, he didn't want to give us any attention that we hadn't earned. But he then comes out and he hits us with the Silly and Billy reference. And we were like, bro, you just gave us a huge gift basket. We need to like send you a fruit basket. So we immediately had our buddy Matt, the letter hack, draw us up as Beavis and Butthead, but renamed it Silly and Billy. And we just, you know, the rest is history.
Too good. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I got your content initially because I saw you guys critiquing TYT kind of in like a Kalinsky style, kind of like in a, you know, from the left, which I appreciated, that there were people on, you know, on the left on YouTube that were seeing what was going on with TYT, and not just them too, other people who were, you know, more of the grifty types, some of the people who are supporting certain third parties but don't really put any effort into it. And I just really appreciated your guys' voice and never losing sight of what Trump is and the kind of authoritarian turn that he's taken. So really appreciate talking to y'all.
Yo, appreciate it, bro. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate the, you know, kind words. Glad you've been enjoying the show.
Yeah.
And I've really been enjoying your, you know, content recently, man. I was just saying that, you know, I feel like you maybe just recently kind of popped on the scene with some of this debate stuff, you know, stepping into the ring with like Tim Pool and shit like that. Crazy stuff. How did you get on these people's radar?
Yeah. So initially I started doing Twitch debates during law school. So I'm a lawyer for your audience who don't know my background. I was in law school as a 2L, that's like your second year, and then COVID hit. And like there were no more big, you know, law school events. People were stuck inside. And I went on these Twitch debate panels. One was sponsored by a guy named Prime Kai. And he was like kind of a lefty person who actually introduced me first to what Breaking Points was, or I think it was Crystal Ball and Sagar had a show on The Hill.
Rising.
Yeah. And so every day he would like play a clip from The Hill. And I started to get more and more introduced to the online political scene. It was very small, but over time,
it was surreal to go on Breaking Points in and chat with.
Super surreal.
That was kind of your introduction.
Yeah, no, exactly, 100%. And it was like at first just 14 people watching, 20 people watching, 30 people watching, but people would start to bring me on to these debates to talk about, you know, what I was learning in law school or political stuff, and that's how I met some of these other people. You know, Destiny. I met Josiah eventually through those, and I collaborate now a lot with Pondering Politics, and so yeah, more and more I was doing that, and then after the election, I really started to like look at myself in the mirror and be like, I want to do more stuff. I want to put a lens on what's happening with the country, especially what Trump is doing, because I think that there's a lot of law tubers that are on the right that will be more in the streaming world, and a lot of the law tubers on the left kind of are a little bit more stuffy, a little bit more. You know, they're always in suits, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to have a different angle on the law stuff. And so with Tim Pool, the guy whose stream I was initially on, Prime Kai, he actually brought me on. He recommended me to Tim Pool because I guess he was on. And that was great because at the time they were doing these like Alien Enemies Act deportations or arresting people because of what they thought, you know, on Palestine, which is absolutely insane and authoritarian. And so I jumped at the opportunity to do that, and now I'm going to do it again on May 3rd with Tim Pool and someone else.
And real quick, what was your What of law were you planning on practicing before?
Yeah, so
you decided to get into the Twitch world. I'm not sure if you still if you're still working in law.
yeah, I'm a litigator. This is now, so I was admitted to practice.
Great for streaming, then.
Yeah, no, right, yeah. In 2022, so this is now like 3 years a full lawyer. So that's just a general litigator. Contracts gone wrong, but I did a lot of pro bono work in immigration. So I actually got an understanding of immigration, and I just always have interest in First Amendment doctrine, that kind of stuff. And I knew right away that as soon as Trump was going to be inaugurated, we're going to see levels of corruption that we've never seen before. And I think a lot of the immigration cases are the big test cases for the corruption. When it comes to the First Amendment, right? That's where their front line on it is, because that's where they have like the least sympathetic defendants. So they go after someone like Mahmoud Khalil because they are counting on them not being sympathetic, but it's really just a gateway to get into attack regular Americans. Why are they going after Harvard? For same reason, because they think that they're going to be an easy target, and because they assume, I think it's not necessarily a good assumption, that people are just going to support it because they don't like Palestinian protesters. Same thing with due process. They're going after people they allege to be gang members. And so I kind of see the immigration stuff, a lot of these cases, as test cases for the administration and what they're planning.
Yeah, dude. That's the thing that's been blowing Gavin's eyes, or at least my mind, the most was, I knew it was going to be bad, but they're just, and you obviously, like, you never want to undersell. So we always took Trump's threat very seriously over on our show. We were like, this guy's a fascist. He has to be opposed. He's not going to have any, consideration for the rule of law. But even I'm shocked back here. I'm like, holy shit. Like, it's just difficult to watch it all unfold. I saw this tweet from Kyle Kalinske that I thought put things into really good perspective. He said, in the last few days, we've learned ICE arrested a Virginia man in the courthouse after the judge dismissed his case. There was no warrant at the time of Mahmoud Khalil's arrest.
Yep.
A U.S. citizen was held captive for 10 days by DHS as they lied about him. Trump regime moved an immigrant from Philly to Texas after a judge ordered them not to. A man spent a month searching for his brother just to learn he was illegally trafficked to El Salvador. And that's addition to all of the other things that we've learned, like the man that was sent to the El Salvadoran prison,
yep.
Because of his autism awareness tattoo. And then he says, make no mistake, Judge Hannah Dugan is enforcing the law, and she was arrested by fascist criminal gangster thugs for doing so. So we have all of this going on. We've got Mahmoud Khalil, who we've mentioned. We've got Ramisa Ozturk. We've got Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I don't know if this is tinfoil hat, but I was prepping for our conversation today, and I noticed every single one of those individuals was born in 1995. They're all 30 years old. Like, it just to put it into perspective for people, they're going after young people the most, right? Like, they're going after PhD students, people who pursued the higher education. I'm just wondering if there's anything to that you've heard, or if I'm just like, looking too deeply into the weeds.
No, I think it doesn't surprise me they're going after younger people. I think a lot of the times when you start ruffling the feathers of older persons, maybe there's some feeling that it'll get some of the more reliable voters or their base to be upset. Maybe there's something to that. I also think that immigrants tend to be younger. People who are in these campuses tend to be younger, right? So there are a lot of things that might contribute to that. But really, I'd like to dwell a little bit on some of these cases, and I think we're going to see a lot of common ground. So just take the Mahmoud Khalil case. This is a situation where, if I'm sure your audience is aware, he was seen by the administration as a kind of negotiator between some of the student activist groups and Columbia University. And when they were trying to make demands, they were facilitated often through him. He, on his notice to appear, which is like a charging document for the immigration cases that charge you as removable, it is the most bare bones assertion of government authority. They're saying, for example, oh, you're a serious danger to the foreign policy interests of the United States. And that's pretty much it. You attended a rally where there was anti-Semitism and where there was disruption. And therefore, the Secretary of State has determined that you are removable. That's it, right? So take a second to notice how bare bones that is. It's not like you are a member of Hamas, or you've ever communicated with Hamas, or you even said something supportive of Hamas. You have all these people saying he's a Hamas supporter. We actually don't have any strong evidence of like any horrible statement that he's made that supports Hamas or anything like that. They won't even say, for example, like at most they point to some equivocal statements that a student organization has made, not even like supporting Hamas. So take that. Now take what they're saying about his arrest. They're saying we didn't even need a warrant to go into his house because when it relates to immigration, we don't need warrants. whenever they try to make these kind of like big exceptions in due process and warrants, when they give you bare bones, charging documents that say that you're removable, they don't do that because they're stupid. They're trying to set precedents that they don't need to give you any basis, any strong basis to remove you, any reason to a judge to go into your house. Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened to Mahmoud Khalil.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened to Ramisa Oster.
Yep.
We saw Ramisa Oster get abducted on camera at Tufts University. Mahmoud Khalil, when he describes in his letter from the jail that he released, he talked about how it was like a dude in a Marvel t-shirt. They didn't present a warrant, as we know for a fact now. He alleged that at the time, and it's been verified. These are just people who black bagged him off the street, and they're going to do it again and again and again. And now they're putting a judge in jail for saying this is against the law. You can't fucking do that.
And it's actually kind of, I think it's important for us to fight all the misinformation. So I don't fully believe what I'm about to say, in the sense that I do think it's important to fight misinformation, but it almost doesn't matter if Mahmoud Khalil supports Hamas. Just like it almost doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't matter if Kilmar Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13, right? You're allowed to, under the First Amendment, support Hamas. You're allowed to, when you're in this country, support terrorist organizations in terms of vocally supporting them in abstract ways, right? A lot of people would say similar things about other regimes or other groups that some people consider to be terrorists, other people don't consider to be terrorists. That's part of like basic First Amendment, core political speech, is to say, I agree with this group versus I don't agree with that group. Same thing with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Everyone, even the worst criminals in history in the United States, get due process. You don't get to just skip that step because you're really, really sure he's guilty. I totally agree that the overreach here is the point. It is, I think, helpful for some of these cases that the people behind, or the victims, do actually seem to be decent people, good people who've done nothing wrong. But it almost wouldn't even matter even if they were horrible people, because the rights deprivation and the government overreach is part of the point.
Interesting. Well, we talk about like the debate and stuff. You go into the, into the ring with some of these Republicans, people like Temple, but also some of Trump's own lawyers. Yeah. What on just a psychological level, do you have any insights? Like, do you think that these people really genuinely believe that this is defensible in the United States of America? Or do you think that everyone you're debating, everyone you're talking about this, is really just trying to come up with justifications like post hoc to make it seem okay and normal in this system when clearly it's not? What's like the, I guess, maybe best case scenario you've heard defense wise, and what's just the worst? Yeah, no, I've been struggling with that. So I think it's a great question more and more about how many genuine believers are there versus true grifters. There are true grifters. Absolutely. There are 100% true grifters. But I think more and more that people will find a way to justify it to themselves. So this guy, Ron Coleman, who I talked to, one of Trump's lawyers, he actually admits on the call that he was part of the effort. Yeah. He was part of the effort to steal the 2020 election. He admits on the call. He continues saying things, the defamatory things about those two Georgia election workers. I bait him into saying, yeah, they committed fraud, which is the basis of Rudy Giuliani having like millions of dollars of judgment. And now I don't know if anyone will see it, then we'll raise the claim based on what Ron Coleman said there. And it was a little bit, he didn't press too hard on the facts. I think he knew that he was stepping into some shaky territory. But I do think that there's a level of, they have convinced themselves that what they're doing is correct, because you'll hear what he says at the start. It's a war. It's an existential war between us and them. And if you take that view seriously, and he has also, I think, and I'm not just saying this because he's Jewish, he does have a strong support of Israel. And so I think he sees Trump as a much stronger supporter of Israel. And I think he definitely views that conflict as existential. For instance, I see him, I think, supporting attacks on Iran, which I think would be disastrous under normal circumstances, even worse under the current administration. I think you have to be crazy to say that Trump and Netanyahu should be in charge of John
Fetterman, not to derail the conversation. Even John fucking Fetterman was like saying Donald Trump should bomb Iran.
It's insane.
Obviously, yeah. No,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Just, that's a Democratic senator. You know what I mean? Like, insane.
And I will come back to the Ron Coleman thing, but I just want to linger for a second on Fetterman. Fetterman is a traitor, number one. But number two, it's just fucking stupid as a Democrat. He voted for Pam Bondi, right? He voted for Pam Bondi, the only Democratic senator to vote for Pam Bondi, who is now part of this whole gulag conspiracy. And he's handing over a historically corrupt and autocratic president power. So on the one hand, he's saying, let's pass the Lake and Riley Act. He's pressuring other Democrats to pass the Lake and Riley Act. What does the Lake and Riley Act do? It gives more authority for the president and his cronies to have these kind of detentions without any discretion of individuals. And absolutely, like, why in this situation, the first bill that's passed by the administration, would you be a sponsor standing in your fucking shorts right next to Donald Trump, giving him more authority? And now we hear him sort of cajoling Trump into starting a war in the Middle East. What? So Trump can claim even more emergency power so that he can put even more people's lives at risk? You'd have to be crazy, right? So even if you, I said this before to someone else, even if you agreed that war with Iran was a good idea, now that is a humongous assumption. Imagine thinking that war with Iran right now is a good idea, given everything we've learned about.
War is pretty much never a good idea, in my view.
I think sometimes it can be justified, but after all we've seen in recent years of the Iraq war being a disaster, the Afghanistan war and its engagement being a disaster, imagine that you actually believed that it was smart geostrategically, smart for the economy, smart ethically, smart for your own troops, smart for their citizens to, currently to attack Iran, which is a much more sophisticated country in terms of their military than, Iraq was at the time of the invasion, certainly much more unified, long-standing culture than Afghanistan was at the time, which already has like sophisticated drones, much better connected, have all these proxies, a kind of a regular threat that Afghanistan never was. So, but put that all aside and imagine you actually thought it was a good idea to attack Iran. On what world would you say, but we should do it now when Trump's in charge? When we have Pete Hegseth in charge of the Defense Department and he's leaking classified information and they can't even hold on to his staff. You'd have to be an absolute crazy person as a Democratic senator to say, now is a good time for this administration to be in charge in a major escalation in conflict just based on the domestic implications of that. So yeah, Fetterman is cooked. He's completely cooked and he needs to be gone. But yeah, no, I don't know. He seems like a true believer to me. I don't know about you guys.
I think he's a true, victim of a stroke. I think that his brain is thoroughly damaged. It's probably scrambled eggs by now. He genuinely seems like a different person. Like, I feel like some people in our audience, they really did just start paying attention to Fetterman during his campaign. So to them, it's like, it's not that uncommon for a politician to lie a bunch on the campaign trail and then do a 180 once they're in office. But it actually goes far beyond the campaign trail with Fetterman. If anyone, watched like MSNBC anytime from like 2017 to like 2019, maybe Fetterman was one of the strongest people on that network, constantly shitting all over the Republicans, shitting all over Trump. He was one of the best anti-Trump Democrats, genuinely. It's genuinely unexplainable to me. Unless we bring into the
stroke
picture the medical situation with the stroke. But even make sense of this, because it's just such a blatant change, not just in politics, but personality and posture. He's a different person. I think obviously the AIPAC money too is its own form of,
well, yeah, it's
mind control, whatever.
I just don't understand why Democrats, whatever your position is on Israel, why would you take money from an Israel advocacy group that supports MAGA Republicans? I feel like for me, like the major sticking point, the major thing that makes you different is that you're not a MAGA Republican. And so why would you be embracing an organization that is pushing for Trump to turn the country into an authoritarian dictatorship? Put aside.
Well, it's kind of like Biden with Bibi. It's like Bibi made it clear that he wanted Donald Trump to win. If I was Joe Biden, I'd be like, well, f you, bro. I'm not giving you shit until you at least publicly change that position and start groveling to my ass instead of my opponent. Like even just on a fair,
strategically,
ego
right?
level.
Yeah,
and ego too. Like what? Like you're the president and you're letting this guy who's out here advocating for your opponent to beat you and you're still giving him everything he wants. You're still letting him bully you on the national stage. That's what makes this whole situation with Israel and America just so weird and abusive.
Well, yeah. And I mean, what it really comes down to is the fact that we have, made it so easy to fund your entire campaign and make sure that you can sit in Congress for so long as you kind of play ball with AIPAC. They can put so much money into your race. We covered the Nina Turner, Chantel Brown race a few years back. It was millions and millions of dollars that came from AIPAC. It totally washed whatever kind of progressive momentum that Nina Turner had built up over the past couple of years. So, I mean, to me, that it makes sense that way. Like these people are lazy. If you want to stay in Congress and gain power in Congress, it's all about how much you fundraise. It's all about who your connections are. It's all about how often you can stay on the phone. That's how Nancy Pelosi stayed in power for 80 years or however long she did. She was the best fundraiser they had, and that's why she got all of the power, and that's why AIPAC has all of the power, because they have an endless supply of money that they can use to dole out to politicians, and they don't discriminate against whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat, or if you do this or that. They only care about if you're going to show extreme fealty to Benjamin Netanyahu's destruction machine.
Yeah, one thing that gives me hope though is that the Democratic base, it feels like, is waking up a little bit to the weakness in the Democratic Party. To the, like, for example, I think the vote on the continuing resolution, where Schumer's like pushing through without any negotiation a Republican CR that gives additional monies to ICE brown shirts to conduct their raids. People were pissed about that. And when I saw the head-to-head poll between AOC and Schumer for the Democratic Senate, I'm like, people are really angry with the leadership of this administration. And even look at the Democratic Party. Look at how Trump's polling is going down, but the approval rating among Democrats of the Democratic Party is cratered. It's super duper duper low, notwithstanding Trump's growing unpopularity. And so I see some hope that Democrats are going to embrace strong Democrats who are actually willing to oppose the administration and be like, and it feels like a lot of that momentum is from the progressive left and not from the other groups of the left.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. Random question, but I was interested, you're talking about like hope and the Democrats, hopefully rebuilding and coming back better than ever to take out this fascist. Are you optimistic that that's even going to be a possibility? Because, it was kind of ironic. I watched, I saw the other day, Marco Rubio put out a statement like condemning the dictator of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, and his like crazy wife, who's recently been declared like co-president. Yeah. But if you actually pay attention to that regime in Nicaragua, it's basically what Trump is trying to do here. They've accomplished everything that Trump wants to do here in the last like 4 years or so, consolidating power, the military, the police, jailing journalists, doing all this crazy stuff, right? Making it so that his family is set up to take over as soon as he's no longer able to, including his own wife. So it's obviously ironic to see someone like Marco Rubio condemn that and say that the Nicaraguan people deserve so much better. Meanwhile, he's working for the American Ortega, essentially. Do you think that that's actually the direction this country is going, where we're just going to become like a third world sort of despot regime? Or do you think that the Democrats and the establishment will be able to fight back, resist enough come 2028 to break us out of this? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, here's my exclusive The Vanguard optimism take, which I haven't shared before on any platform. I am not like you guys in the sense that I'm not surprised by the moves that you guys weren't surprised either, but you mentioned a little bit like the extent.
I was shocked and appalled. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if surprised is the right word, because it's like after January 6th, it's hard for Donald Trump to surprise you. Yeah. But I think that just the stomach churning nature of it all was an experience that I didn't quite prepare for adequately.
Got it. Yep. Understood. I am definitely in the same churning mode where I'm like just angry and pissed, and but I'm not necessarily in the same kind of like shock mode, because I expected all of this kind of shit, and I've been like fear mongering for it for ever since Trump lost. But that's my saying. Everything you're saying is true. That's what he wants to do, and that's the direction they're taking, and they're taking those steps. They're not moving fast enough, and that's just my it's still a humongous danger to the country, but they're too slow. And they're being inefficient, and they're getting distracted, and they're actually getting slowed down. And so my optimism is, they just arrested a judge today. Yeah, they are, making moves to do these Alien Enemy Act deportations, but they're not being super clinical about it. They're fighting on too many fronts, and this policy of Steve Bannon's to flood the zone has a drawback. And the drawback is apparent. I mean, they're not competent at running the government. Kash Patel is not a competent FBI director. Hegseth is not a competent Defense Department director. And they haven't moved fast enough on the authoritarian train to do the kind of aims that the Project 2025 aims the real fascists in the administration want to do. And we're getting close to midterms, in the sense that I know it's still a few years away, like a year and change away. But once we hit February, things are going to start moving.
Agreed. I really hope you're right. Did you see that they're like potentially going to start going after Act Blue?
Yeah, they are. Yep.
Trying to accuse them of corruption or some bullshit, charge to make it impossible for people to fund.
Yeah, they
candidates.
they should have done this weeks ago, if they, like months ago, if they were going to really do the authoritarianism train. Well, they are trying to do it, and they are trying to do authoritarianism, but I just think that they've now built in too much resistance in the movement, where at first everyone was conceding, right? All the law firms were conceding. All the go ahead, sir.
Oh no, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, no. People were just kind of giving up and rolling over, but you built in the time for now people to see that the administration is willing to sometimes, yield to certain other institutional actors, to do things a different way, to spend all this time in court arguing whether they violated an order or didn't violate an order. Just even that, right? The fact that they're in court and spending so much time trying to say, we didn't violate the order, we did violate the order. It's kind of a song and dance, and it's kind of wasting their time if they really want to do this authoritarianism right. There's too many people, either because of their, upbringing or because of something in the back of their head, that aren't willing to take the full plunge. There are people who are willing to take the full plunge, for sure. But do you
think it's the people around Trump, like the Marco Rubios? Do you think they're a little bit skittish about going straight?
Yeah, I think there's some skittishness there, and if they really wanted to do it effectively, there wouldn't be. And so the fact that they're in courts arguing, did we violate the order? Did we not violate the order? No, the Supreme Court. It all shows to me that there's still some trepidation among the people, some internal misgivings, and not that they're not evil people. Yeah.
My theory is that a lot of these people, the Marco Rubios and stuff, they don't actually have that much of an opposition, or, they don't really care that much about fascism and authoritarianism, but they do know that Donald Trump is a deeply unserious, incompetent person. They know that better than any of us, right? They have to spend time and take orders from this piece of shit, right? So they are probably a little bit sketchy. They're like, I would turn over the country to a competent authoritarian,
that's a good
but
point.
Do we really want to go down this road of national embarrassment and because once Trump's out, it's going to be Don Jr., then it's going to be even more embarrassing. It's not going to get any better
You hit the nail on the head there, because they have to plan for Trump's old, and you can talk about 2028 all you want, or 2032.
He's selling hats now.
Yeah, which is, it's kind of baity, but I think he would be willing to do it. But he's old, and Father Time has not failed yet. He will die, and they need to plan for the world post-Trump, and that is just something that has to happen. And right now, he's in a little bit of a lame ducky situation, and he's old as fuck. And so if you're one of these bureaucrats, you're putting your neck out on the line. You don't know how things are going to turn out tomorrow. And that if he were a younger, more dynamic authoritarian, we'd have a different conversation. If he were like Saddam Hussein in his prime, or one of these younger people, I think you would see a lot more people willing to take the plunge. But I think that the inherent flaws of the leader are making people uncertain.
If I want to push back on anything, and not that I'm married to it, you're a lawyer, I'm not, but I want to talk a little bit about the 22nd Amendment, right?
Yeah.
I and Gavin here, we were big, cautioners about the fact that Donald Trump would definitely not eliminate the possibility of running for a third term, and that he would likely actively seek one. This man, tried to steal the election in 2020. He hates to lose. It was everything just pointed at the fact that he would try and win election again if he thought he was going to be able to. There are no real successors for the Republican Party. He has a pretty clear path through whatever kind of sham primary they would offer. I don't think anybody, even after the disastrous tariffs, even after all of the violations of the law, even after we've just seen his base does not care what he does, and that base is seemingly strong enough to get him through a Republican primary. I get so concerned that he is going to run for a third term and use all of the powers of his office and make sure that he's executive privileges and, all of the judges, the Supreme Court stacked in his favor, and the circuit judges are stacked in his favor. And when the Supreme Court rules against him, he'll say, "Oh, I didn't understand that. My people said 9-0 is 9-0 about something different," which was a direct quote when he violated a Supreme Court order in the first place. And nothing was done to remove him from office or, punish him in any way. They're just like, "Oh, he's the president. He can do whatever he wants."
You're not wrong about any of that. You are not wrong about any of that. And so when I say he's kind of a lame ducky, I mean more in the sense sense of his age and that people are uncertain if he will run again. If he wants to, he'll run, and if he wants to, he'll win, and he'll have it. And he is willing to use his office if he wants to entrench himself in office. So I totally agree with all of what you just said in terms of your analysis. What I'm saying is there are limits in terms of when he wants to do that final plunge to arrest all the members of the Supreme Court or all of Congress. He needs to have all his ducks in a row, and I just don't think he's getting them in the row fast enough. Now, he could speed up to, like, right now, everyone's like, oh my God, they're moving so fast. They are moving fast in the sense that, like, compared to any other administration, I just think they're not moving fast enough to do what they need to do to fully turn us into authoritarianism. Now, they could still do it. And so I might be eating my words, and I've been the person who's most like, hey, this is a real danger. And you're not wrong about anything you're saying. But if he's going to do that, he needs to be prepared.
I'm going to take your
it.
optimism. I agree with you. We're good. We're fine.
But you know, the only thing, and I don't mean to harp on this, because like I do also appreciate your optimism, but just what I worry about is that, you know, okay, so he has the 9-0 Supreme Court. I don't know how they would rule on a 22nd Amendment, you know, deal, but technically the Supreme Court isn't supposed to be able to overturn a constitutional amendment, right? It's supposed to be an act of Congress and the Senate, and it's like, you know, 60 votes and all this kind of shit that Donald Trump will never have. So just if they were going to try and go about this, right, because I think we could all agree that there is a potential outcome where they at least take a swing at it, whether it's haphazard or successful is up for debate. But what would be the argument that they would even go through? You've kind of spent more time around Trump's, you know, brain think tank than we have.
So there are a couple things. The first is on the Anderson case. The Anderson case was the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment case where the Supreme Court should have disqualified Trump based on his insurrectionist acts, but they kind of threw it out on a technicality. They're like, Congress needed to enact something. But in coming to that determination, they said that one thing that the 14th Amendment didn't do was disturb the state's inherent authorities, that the state's, the federal courts were not able to interfere, that state courts were not able to interfere in the election of a federal candidate. That could be dangerous in the sense that it kind of opens the door. If state courts are not allowed to apply some qualifications for president, in the case of Section 3, why would they be able to enforce the 22nd Amendment as to candidates, right? So that's one line, which is the Supreme Court seemed to suggest that at least on some qualifications for federal offices, the state courts did not have the authority to judge qualifications for president. It's a little bit in the weeds. Now, I don't think that's going to be very successful for Trump because they can just go into federal court. And when they go into federal court, it's not going to have the same kind of baggage as Section 3. I think a federal court will strike it down. And so I don't think that's very successful. There's another route from the 22nd Amendment, which I think they might do. And I actually agree with Trump on this specific loophole, believe it or not. And that's going to shock and horrify your audience. But I've been saying it for a while. The 22nd Amendment refers to election to office, that you cannot be elected to office more than twice, or if you've served, more than half of a term and had another term in office. It doesn't say that you are ineligible for that office. You don't have eligibility to the office, where the other qualifications for presidency do speak of eligibility. And there's actually, I believe, some legislative history that they could have spoken in terms of eligibility for office for the 22nd Amendment, but instead spoke in terms of elected to office. The idea there being, well, what if there's this one-off situation where we need to have a replacement president because they've done like some kind of decapitation strike, and it's better to have like the old president who's already served 2 terms, and we can just elect him as the new president through like the other procedures of like who gets the next office if like the president dies, right? And the vice president dies. So there seems to be specific language in the 22nd Amendment to make it a prohibition to winning an election for president. And so the idea would be J.D. Vance runs for president, Donald Trump runs for vice president, and there's the 12th Amendment says that all the vice president qualifications are the same as the presidential qualifications, but as we just spoke, it doesn't seem that the 22nd Amendment is a qualification. It seems like or eligibility for office. It has to do with like elections. And so I think that he could run for a vice presidential term, J.D. Vance on the top of the ticket, and J.D. Vance, resigns, and then he becomes the president.
20% of the vote if Vance was at the top of the ticket. So all of a sudden his support craters.
I think that that's actually legitimate in terms of what the Constitution says. Now, I disagree. It violates like the spirit of the Constitution for sure, and I think it would be fraught with other dangers. But he could try that. But I
Don't
think
you
that
think he would rather have his son do it? He would than JD.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Because at least because JD, if I'm JD, I'm be like, yeah, this is a great idea, sir. I will run for president with you as my vice president, and then I will never answer your fucking phone calls again.
That's one of the dangers. Yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean, and for people who have seen The West Wing, guys, there's the scene where John Goodman gets to be president for 3 days, and he comes in with a fucking baseball bat. He's like, bro, I'm taking swings at everything. You and your liberal government, we're cutting everything that we possibly can over the course of these 3 days because I'm the president now and you can't tell me no, right? That's the kind of thing that would happen. So I don't see Donald Trump getting behind that unless it's one of his children that he's thoroughly brainwashed from birth.
Yeah, 100%. And in the sense,
was that stop it from being done? It has to be someone kind of electable though.
Yeah,
and JD is probably viewed as more competent than goofy ass Don Jr., who's just a cokehead. Like, I hate JD Vance, but at least your average Joe probably views him as an actual serious person somewhat.
Yeah, I just view that option is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way when they see Donald Trump Jr. at the top of the ticket, or if they see,
including Trump himself.
Yeah,
it's going to rub Trump the wrong way. He doesn't want to be the second guy.
So I think that there's a lot of reasons why he might not do it. He's willing to, for sure. And I actually think that loophole is a real loophole. I really do think that that's a way constitutionally. I'm just being honest that I can't read anything else into the language of qualification for some of them in terms of the age, in terms of the natural born citizen, in terms of everything else, being a resident for a certain amount of time.
So Obama could run as the VP for
I do believe that. And I'm not just saying that now because I've been arguing that for not that I wanted it to see it happen because I didn't want it to happen, but that it could happen and that Obama could have a third term. And I said that before Trump was even on the scene.
Just open up Pandora. Let's go.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, I mean, I think that Barack Obama could win a third term if he went head to head with Donald Trump. He would win easily. I mean, he's so much more. I mean, like, just to be superficial, like, just so shallow. We're not talking about any of his politics, which we could debate for hours and hours and hours. He's handsome. He's very well spoken. He makes you feel at ease and safe when you think he's in charge. And I'm talking about as a regular American, not as somebody who wants to be like sophisticated and nuanced and scrutinize his positions and whatnot. But I just mean, like, when you listen to that guy talk, you're like, oh yeah, that's a different guy than Donald Trump. You know what I mean? That's a guy that actually like looks like a statesman. You know what I mean? It's the same reason like Macron. So he stays in power. He's handsome. He's well spoken. They think he represents France. Like, that's kind of how people felt about Barack Obama.
I would say Obama's actually more popular than Macron ever has been. Also, now there's the nostalgia for Obama. People underestimate how powerful nostalgia is. 10 years have passed. There's so many people that would give nothing. They think they view the Obama era like boomers think of the Reagan era.
True.
They're like, that's the last time things actually were right and good. I think Obama would win in like a 90% landslide.
I think it would be a blowout too. I think millennials especially are very nostalgic for that era. Millennials are super left wing anyway, but I think that even the general public. I mean, he won Ohio. He won.
He won the entire
Indiana.
Rust Belt.
Yeah, it's wild.
Literally.
Yeah.
Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin,
North Carolina, in the first one. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's crazy. I guess last thing from me. Pisco, since this is the Vanguard and we like to do horse race very, very early, who's your favorite to save the Democratic Party and defeat Donald Trump in 2028?
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Tim Walz. These are people I would want, all right? I'm not saying the most electorally viable. AOC, Tim Walz, Pete Buttigieg, or Chris Murphy, those four. And it's not that super duper ideological for me. It's about energy. It's about strength. And I see AOC, I see where Bernie's at, I see Tim Walz as having a lot of energy, as being where a lot of the vigor is in the party. And I think that their policies are good. And I think the same thing, Pete Buttigieg is probably more conservative than them, more centrist. But I also see him as young and dynamic. And I see Chris Murphy as a kind of a realist. He probably is going to stay in the Senate. He almost certainly wouldn't run for president. But yeah, those are the politicians I probably would most want to see on a presidential ticket. And again, it's not super duper ideological. It's about strength for me. It's about being, standing on business and being willing to take the fight and get ready for the new age.
Yeah, I'd love an AOC Walz ticket. I think that would be a banger.
I think that would be a banger ticket. And Walz, I think he's just not taking the shit of the Tesla people who are like, oh my God, you can't criticize the Tesla stocks. To me, that's just, I'm so glad that at least some Democrats are starting to be over this kind of civility politics that has already almost, maybe has always been a lie, but especially recently, it's shown itself to be like not where the country is, and we shouldn't be playing by these archaic rules that no one on the other side listens to. I mean, what about for you guys? You guys want to see a Tim Walz AOC ticket? Who among the Democrats, as presidential?
I think Tim Walz is good. And don't get me wrong, I know he has a lot to, come back from after the way he was tarred and feathered and smeared and slandered and called a fake veteran and a child molester or whatever they said about the guy, a bunch of crazy lies, right? So he'd have to come back from that for sure and kind of present himself, reintroduce himself. But what I think Walz has that honestly none of the other people that we're talking about, including AOC and Pete Buttigieg, is that not only does he have the right record, but he actually has the accomplishments to back it up. He can actually say, I'm pretty much the best governor in the entire country. Look at how I've changed Minnesota for the better. Look at how much I've done since I got elected as the governor of Minnesota. Whereas like Pete Buttigieg, AOC, they're both very youthful. They're both good communicators, but what can they actually point to as far as like, this is what I did? Like, what did Pete Buttigieg actually do to uplift South Bend, and AOC, obviously she's a great congresswoman, but there's only so much a congressperson
you're right on that, and I think that makes Tim Walz for me appealable. I think he's a little shaky in the kind of confrontational debates, and so I'm a little worried about that, but I don't think debates matter that much. My absolute no's, I would vote for them if it were between them and a Republican, obviously, but I don't like what I'm seeing out of Gavin Newsom. I don't like what Gretchen Whitmer did. I thought it was like a bad, weak move. So these people, I think, don't.
Yeah, she got played. People tried to defend her, and they were like, "Oh, I feel bad. She was trying to advocate for the people of Michigan." I was like, "She was dumb. Sorry, she made a bad political move. I don't think she's a dumb person per se, but you know what I mean. Like that was a bad mistake. She got played. That's why she covered her face. Like if she was proudly there representing the people of Michigan, she would have come out and said, "That's right. It's my job to represent Michigan. I didn't vote for this guy to be president, but it's my job to negotiate with him. You know what? This is the situation we're at. This is how I'm trying to salvage the backbone of Michigan's economy." But because she cowered, because she knew that she'd gotten played, I think
it's a bad taste in my mouth. Also, other people I put on the no list is Alyssa Slotkin. I just saw it in the chat. Like, did you see her speech after the Trump speech? She's like talking about Ronald Reagan. She's like, Jesus Christ, can we just get over this whole bipartisan bullshit? Wait, but before we end though, I do want to have some Cenk talk, if you don't mind, just for a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So the first thing I'll ask about is this rebellion pack situation. You guys kind of called this. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys predicted this exact thing.
Well, we kind of spilled the beans. It's not that we predicted it, but Cenk preemptively announced it on a members-only Zoom call that we got access to the audio from. So then we played that audio on our show like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where
maybe more than that,
maybe a month ago, where he was basically like, we're going to redo Justice Democrats, but with under the guise of populism instead of progressivism, essentially. But this time it's going to be through Rebellion PAC, which is a total farce, in my opinion. So it's not that we predicted it. It's more that we just kind of, ruined his big announcement by spilling the beans a month early on our show, which our subscribers, they were lucky. They already knew the big announcement.
I was going to ask you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, take it away, man.
I was just going to say, because the reason I bring it up is because you brought it to my attention that PAC was run by Brianna Wu, who blocked me on Twitter because I asked her, do you support the detention and deportation of Mahmoud Khalil? And she blocked me for that. But I asked that because
he does, by the way.
It's absolutely atrocious. The kind of grifter conversation we were having before about the lawyer and all that stuff, I don't see Cenk as a pure grifter in that sense. I think that he's convinced himself that this is the right path. But when you see him like making all of these ideological concessions and working with a certain group of people who just are nice to him, but who don't appear to share a lot of the values either he has or used to have. What's your take on all that? Is he just like trying to group up with people who find him cool or that he likes, or what's going on?
I will make the case to you right now, because this is my firm belief, that Cenk is a capitalist to his bones and that he cares about making money. We've talked to so many people who have worked with Cenk over the years, and the one thing that stands out most to me, I don't know if it was Sam Cedar who said it. I think it was about how Cenk wants to be seen in airports. He wanted the Young Turks to be in airports, and I think if you go back and you watch Cenk, right, like Gavin and I'm 27, Gavin's 26. I think we're pretty politically baked, right? If I came out in 3 years and started like wearing a MAGA hat, you might be like, this guy's full of shit. I just heard him make a lot of passionate anti-MAGA talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because people will look back on young people, and they'll look back on young people and they'll be like, oh, he was just 27. Like, you know, he didn't know what he was saying. I'm like, you have a fucking functional brain when you're 27 years old. It was the last year of Kurt Cobain's life. He's still kind of relevant. You know what I mean? Like you've got a baked cake up there. Well, Cenk was like 30 years old when he decided to not be a conservative and become a progressive. And then he first started riding the Obama bandwagon. And then in 2015, he saw a real lane on YouTube, which was progressive media. And that was like shooting fish in a barrel. It was like hitting a pinata of money at that time. And it blew up his entire network. Before then, they were reacting to like, you know, Asian ladies making out. And this is how chicken nuggets is made. And like, you know, this lady got mauled by a chimpanzee. It's all still up on the Young Turk. Go look at their oldest videos. That's what they were doing. And so he pretends that he's done 25 years of progressive media, but he really hasn't. He's done about 10 years of progressive media. And the last 5 of that have been him acquiescing to the right wing at every opportunity so that he can get deals with Polymarket Studios and take money from Peter Thiel and advocate for shit that's not even legal in the United States. He's taken multiple rounds of venture capital funding. He had money from Joseph Sandberg, who's just gotten indicted for $100 million fraud in California. He tried to get his audience to use that guy's banking app. He never ran a single story telling people that guy committed fraud. He basically said that when he ran for president, he said he was going to take super PAC money as he's running a PAC to get money out of politics. I mean, the guy is just a grifter. He only cares about his name. And the reason he was so pissed and the reason he fired Brianna Wu wasn't because he had any problem with her rabid Zionism or her support for Mahmoud Khalil's deportation and her hatred of anybody who, you know, doesn't fit into her mold. But it is the fact that people like APAC Tracker, people like the Vanguard were ratioing the out of Cenk in his announcement. His announcement tweet got like 100 favorites. He was getting blown out of the water on Twitter. It was a humiliation. And he had to fire her the next morning as an effort to save face.
So you think that it was just a face-saving maneuver that he...
100%. Gavin played a clip of him bragging about Brianna Wu being on the board of the directors on Andrew Cuomo the night they announced it.
Really?
Oh yeah, with Brianna Wu, like if you're not familiar, she's kind of had a bit of a John Fetterman style evolution herself. I don't know if there was a stroke involved, but back when she first probably met Cenk in like the 2010s or whatever, she was just like this feminist writer. Essentially, she was like one of the major targets of the Gamergate abuse, alongside people like Anita Sarkeesian.
Yeah, oh, I remember that.
She's always been kind of cringe, you know, like overly obsessed with the SJW bullshit, but she was like relatively normal, seemingly, compared to how she is now. So I think that her and Cenk probably met and started working together back during that period. And Cenk's just too loyal. He's too loyal to people like Brianna Wu and Anna Kasparian, who I do think has kind of led him off the deep end on some issues along with her. I agree with Zach to some extent about the fact that he's always been a capitalist and a grifter, but I do think that there was a point where he, you know, genuinely did have some sort of an ideological foundation. And I've watched him kind of throw a lot of that away, seemingly in this pursuit of Anna Kasparian's ideology and attempt to keep her on board with the network. And
because he's loyal personally to her, you're saying?
He is, and he doesn't want her to feel like she's out of step ideologically or she's not home ideologically. So I see him in real time adapting his ideology to make her more comfortable as she goes crazier and crazier. So, you know, it's a complex stew of different things. But yeah, I think ultimately Cenk is a capitalist. And what we see is that when all you care about is making money and getting attention, you will easily sacrifice a lot of your so-called principles or political ideological values to, you know, attempt to achieve that ends. And it's embarrassing and pathetic for Cenk because it's actually done the opposite. It's totally backfired. TYT is less relevant than ever. They have less viewers than ever. Their pivot totally failed. No one on the right wing watches them like they wanted to rebuild their audience in that image. So
it's got to be it was a huge miscalculation of the quote unquote right wing populist base and where they're at and what kind of content they want to see. They want to see content about the dear leader. No, that's so interesting you're saying that, because I think that the way you paint it is maybe like more of like the personal loyalty mixed with the capitalism and more of like these kinds of different motivations to keep Anna on board. Anna, who, by the way, I think also has been saying like untrue things about a lot of these different topics, and frankly has been making a fool of herself.
She was early into the fear mongering about the Tren de Aragua. She was so early into the, we need to deport these, you know, cartel gangs, and wow, we need to clean up our streets. And I can't believe the left isn't talking about how these people are ruining working class people's lives. And it was like no mention of the fact that was run by a slumlord. No mention of the Colorado apartment complex. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, this is what frustrates me, and I guess we'll finish finish and bring it back to the debate situation and why I do this, I think that it's very telling when people who say things like that about that specific issue, the Tren de Aragua taking over of was it in Aurora, Colorado? I think
Aurora,
it was.
Colorado. Yeah, right outside Denver.
Yep. And another one was the LA fire chief. They accused her of, they accused the LA mayor of downgrading the fire budget when actually, when you look at it, it was increased. It actually was increased, and I have the facts and figures to show that. But she had spread this. They
literally said that those fires were started by homeless drug users, Pisco.
Oh yeah.
Literally,
is that
they
true?
said that it was started by homeless drug users. They implied that those were arsons and homeless drug users. We made a joke. We were like, I don't think anybody's ever invited Cenk to get high before. He still thinks you smoke a bowl of fire of weed. Like, oh, let's just throw it all in a trash can and
was it because there was a video of some guy like doing some weird, or was it?
Well, that's where it started.
Okay,
but then
yeah.
Anna took it to the next level, and she's like, and let me add on top of this, the homeless encampment that's in my neighborhood recently caught fire, so maybe that's what's starting it. They're constantly doing drugs in those places.
I
so
see
I guess there's the answer.
many parallels between how those news stories go and everything that's going on right now with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, where there was like a domestic violence restraining order or something for a little bit, and people will take that and run with it and say, then clearly he's an MS-13 member, or there was this report by the police officer where there was someone confidential who claimed he was part of MS-13, but was never cross-examined, never really went into it, and he was wearing like Chicago Bulls jersey, and that's why he's a member of MS-13, and people will take like snippets of truth and I think come to wild conclusions, and I think that the LA fire situation was really crystallized that. But I'll just finish with this and say that was an area where I think, like, if Anna really believes this stuff, if she really believed the thing about Tren de Aragua and the Aurora, Colorado apartments, she should have a debate about it. She should have a discussion about it. And I think it's telling that a lot of people on these immigration matters aren't willing to have a debate on it on the conservative side, and that Anna and Cenk, though they're willing to go on Glenn Beck in the Blaze and all these different places, I don't think that they're as willing to have these conversations with like the lib or lefty criticisms. Not always. Sometimes Cenk will do it, but never, I think, in the areas where I think they need it.
100%. Not only will they not engage, they'll literally fire the contributors who are threatening to try to engage on those topics. People like Francesca who begged Cenk to set up a debate between her and John Iadarola versus Cenk and Anna on this specific issue. I believe it was either that or the birthing person debacle. Either way, they go out of their way to refuse to engage with the critics, to engage with people that feel differently or have a different perspective. And again, like, I don't even care about the disagreements so much. Like, I have some hot takes that sometimes land me in hot water with our audience or with the progressive community at large. I'm not like some perfect fucking pure leftist. No, I have hot takes and unpopular opinions too, but I'm willing to hash it out. Like, yeah, Zach will sometimes push back and I'll have to defend my ideology, and I'm happy to do it. Sometimes I'll end up admitting that I was wrong or changing my opinion, whatever. But like, if I tuned into some other show and other lefties were criticizing something that I said, I wouldn't use that as an opportunity to leave the left. I'd be like, I guess I got to go into the lion's den and defend that stupid shit I said last stream or whatever. Like, that's just obvious to me. But Anna totally used all the criticism, and not even criticism, but just attempts to engage, as an excuse to be a victim and be like, I'm the victim of this bullying from the left because they disagreed with me. Like, that's literally the whole point of this space.
Okay, so I'm going to push you guys. Two questions. First one is,
sure.
Did you vote for Kamala Harris?
I did,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, sick. All right, next one.
I voted. I you know what? For as rad leftist as I've been, I will tell you, just as two men, Pisco, for as good and bad as it has made me feel at different parts of my life, and trust me, I've had some moments where I really reflected on it. I also voted for Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I voted for
a lot of people are surprised by that. But I definitely that never made me bite my tongue about it. But it was just like there was no other viable for me.
No, I voted for Clinton too.
We're Democrats.
Yeah.
We're just, I believe, the left flank of the Democratic Party, and that's how we position ourselves.
No, I love that shit, and yeah, so what might surprise your audience is I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020, both of those times. I remember being in my law school dorm with my friends. We were on Super Tuesday when we thought that Bernie like clinched everything, and then Biden win everything. We were devastated. But
oh, he's gonna come back after South Carolina. It's gonna be cool. He's gonna sweep.
And it happened. The bastard. He did it. No, but
I wrote an article called Biden's Pyrrhic Victory in South Carolina. Okay?
Oh, shit, you
nobody had
did?
more hopium than I was like, it's all up. Fuck Biden. He bet all on South Carolina. Nobody's ever won the first 3 primaries in law. Yeah, dude. We were on. I mean, that was the Nevada night was probably one of the happiest I've ever been as a adult. You know what I mean? It's like just like holy shit.
That was a wild when I forget. I think Nate Silver was still doing 538 like tracking of the primaries. When it flipped to the most likeliest candidate being Bernie, I remember feeling so elated, like this shit's happening, bro. It's happening. But yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for having me on. It's really is a pleasure to reach out to you. I have to say, I am a fan of a lot of the content, and especially, you know, when you're ragging on Trump, when you're ragging on the pretenders, the fakers, the fraudsters, and you're, I think, bringing a lot of the truth to your audience about what the state of the country is. I want to be clear, even though I brought some level of optimism for the first time on your stream, I do think that your like diagnosis about the state of the country is not off. I just think that we need to be to an even worse state to be in like the kind of no hope zone. And I'm seeing signs of incompetence, signs of slowness, signs of weakness from the Trump administration. So that's the only reason that I'm bringing that up.
Well, really appreciate you sharing it, man. It was an awesome conversation. We definitely have to schedule another one at some point in the near future to catch up on everything. I'm sure there's going to be like a year's worth of insanity that'll happen just in the next
2 days,
week.
yeah.
But I really appreciate you not only coming on, but also, doing this hard work of debating a lot of these MAGA propagandists and idiots, because I often sometimes feel ill-equipped to do this because I almost do just kind of turn into a bleeding heart, screeching liberal. I'm like, how are you okay with this? Like, don't you care about human rights? Don't you care about your neighbor and your fellow here? Like, this is wrong. This is immoral. And that works to some extent, but I think it's even more effective when someone like you can sit down and be like, no, this is actually wrong for reasons X, Y, and Z according to the Constitution and the law, and here's why it's illegal, and here's why it's unconstitutional. Like, that is substantive. That is serious. It's not just an appeal to emotion. So really, great work you're doing. And every debate I've seen you in, you've absolutely kicked ass.
Thanks so much, man. And yeah, if you guys want to check it out, on May 3rd, I'm having another discussion on Tim Cast's. The only reason, by the way, I go on these shows is not because I'm going to like grovel to them like some of these other people do. I go on there to debate them and to attack their arguments and that shit. But I will be on Tim Cast's IRL like debating some bullshit Trump MAGA lawyer about Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. And so that'll be on May 3rd. And it won't be streamed on my channel. My channel, by the way, is Pisco's Hour on YouTube. But I think it'll be on Tim Cast's IRL. So if you really like that, give it a watch.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, thank you so much for your time, Pisco. Oh, real quick, I know we've done this like 8 times. Are you Peruvian or Chilean?
Yeah,
or
Peruvian. Wait, have you been to Peru?
I figured you were Peruvian.
Yeah.
No, but I was a bartender for a long time, so I was like,
me too, bro.
This motherfucker better be from Peru. Okay, hell yeah, dude.
How many Pisco Sours did you make in your time?
You know what? Not as many as I could probably say to like brag. I bartended in Kansas City, Missouri, so it's not exactly a hot commodity here.
No.
A little bit of a palate stretch for folks around here if you want to make them a Pisco Sour. But anyway, just
so I bartended in and around Long Island and in Connecticut, and there were a lot of Bloody Marys, a lot of like these like morning drinks and shit. But yeah, not a lot of Pisco Sours. But appreciate the invite, guys, and let's talk again soon.
Absolutely.
All right, later.
Shout out to you, Pisco. Thanks for stopping by.
Peace out.
Sure.